up. I wish I could make this up. The funny anecdote at the end of that story is that very recently, those patents were sold in auction. For a lot less than $50 million. A lot less than $50 million. But an auction, as you know, is not a willing buyer, willing seller environment. That's totally contrived, and people are pressured into going to auctions and bidding auctions to ludicrous high values, and that's why it doesn't matter at all. Because it doesn't matter. So let's get this straight. Where are we going with this? Where are we going with this? Basel II. Financial accounting, knowledge economy, intangible assets. Where are we going with all this? The good news is, and this is why I'm going to tell you we can all breathe this collective sigh of relief. The good news is that according to Business Week, I'll let that one sit in the air like a brick doesn't just for a second. The good news according to Business Week. Right, okay. The good news according to Business Week is that we can outsource our blue-collar jobs, and we can outsource our white-collar jobs, and we can outsource all of our other jobs. But the cool thing about being an American is that we're the guys who really have every creative thought on the planet. And doggone it, it's just good to know that we own the knowledge economy space. Yes, sir. We are the pinnacle of civilization, and we own the knowledge economy. So when Basel II comes along, and when our banks have to explain the collateral adequacy of the enterprises that they fund, we won't have a problem. We won't have a problem because we clearly know that whatever everybody else says their stuff is worth, ours is worth more. Because it's better, of course. It's better because it is. The best part about it is Basel II says that you have to value intangibles. Wow. So you have to value intangibles. You have to actually tell people that you have enough collateral in intangibles to actually justify your credit rating, to justify your loan adequacy to a bank, to justify the rating that you have on your bond. You have to do that, and it all happens on January 1st, 2008. Now, the good news is that nobody's ready for that. That's okay. Don't worry. We're still good, because there's a plan. But there was a little wrinkle in the plan, and we're going to spend a minute on a little wrinkle in the plan. I have had the good fortune, and by the way, I'm being absolutely serious right now. Right now. This part, I'll tell you when I'm not being serious anymore. This part I'm being really serious about. I had the good fortune of traveling throughout the Middle East over the last several months, working with Sharia boards. Now, a lot of you believe that Sharia boards are things that were blown up in the Afghan conflict, and it was the people who were repressing these people and repressing those people, and that's what Sharia boards are. And I'm sure you're right, because that's what it said in the New York Times, so it must be right. But the people I've met with actually are not in Afghanistan right now getting bombed. They're in really wonderful places that are actually nice tourist destinations, and some places that are fun to go to, but not really tourist destinations. But they're in a really interesting area of the world, and the interesting thing about Sharia boards is their job is to actually build products called Islamic finance products. Now, why does Islamic finance enter into this conversation about 1815 and 2005 and FASB and Basel II and everything else? Well, for a very good reason. The reason it enters into this conversation is there has been one voice missing from the WTO negotiations, from the Basel negotiations, from all of the negotiations about financial accounting and standards at the IASB, at the FASB, at every other, and that voice happens to be Islamic finance. Now, if you haven't recently traveled to Dubai or Qatar or any of those wonderful places over in the Persian Gulf, and you fly in there, one of the things that strikes you right when you come into those wonderful, really rural, rustic, nomadic areas is that there are more cranes there than in Shanghai. When people want to build a building and they actually want to create a skyscraper that looks like a tulip, they do, and they pay for it in cash. They pay for it in billions of dollars of cash. And you heard me right, billions of dollars of cash. Now, there's a funny reality, because what we have is a situation where the treasury, liquid treasury of the world, has progressively gone through our Hummers and our SUVs. Oh, I was being joking there. That was the joking part. Has gone through that and has showed up in a different part of the world. This is liquid capital. Okay? This is unimpaired liquid capital. Let me stop and just frame up a picture for you just for a second. I was privileged to give a lecture in Tehran on Easter Sunday last year. That's right, me, bald guy, boots, bow tie, lecturing in Tehran on Easter Sunday last year. And in that lecture, I had the opportunity to advise Iran about whether they should join the WTO. I advised them not to. And the reason I advised them not to is because WTO regulations and the treaties do not afford an ability to have a superseding sovereign ability to weigh in on things like corresponding bank and securities issues. You're supposed to all play together. You're supposed to all do things together. You're supposed to follow the leaders. And the leaders of the WTO are the developed countries. And the developed countries don't include those countries, do they? Nope. But those countries seem to have a lot of cash. A lot of cash. And those countries have a lot of cash. And they have very strong ties to some other countries with a lot of cash. Some of which have very strong energy dependencies. Energy dependencies like, I don't know, let's pretend, natural gas, oil, something like that, which might actually be really important strategically at some point in the not too distant future, in 2008. So they have cash, they have energy, they keep getting more cash. The word an extra $1 billion a quarter is spoken there very, very frequently. And so you're sitting there going, gosh, there's a bunch of pieces, but how do they all come together? What's the come together piece here? Well, I'm going to try to give you a come together scenario, which I find to be not only interesting and compelling, but something that I'm actually working to achieve. It's a true realignment